So we're here with Ree Soesbee, and she agreed to answer us some lore questions. So we're going to start off with the first question. What was the relationship between the Dominion of Winds and its neighbors?
The Dominion of Winds is the name of the Tengu city. And the Tengu came from Kantha at a time when the Emperor of Kantha was kicking out everyone who wasn't a human, was forcibly unifying the Kurziks and the Luxons. And when they came just as Or was rising and was really destroying all the passages that could be used to get to Kantha. So they are the last information we have on Kantha, is what the Tengu know. They're very isolationist because when they came from Kantha, the humans were being terrible to them. They were literally kicking them out and driving them from their lands. So they came here with certain preconceived notions that the races here would be bad to them. And they built a city with a great wall around it. And they do trade with people. They have areas outside the wall where you can go to a little Tengu village that's specifically there for trade. But they have not yet allowed the other races into their city because they don't yet trust them.
Okay. Is there only one warband at a given time with a given name? Also known as, is there only one blade warband in the entirety of the Char High Legions?
No, there are multiple. Warband chooses their name when they're ready to leave the Farrar, when they have grown up and they're ready to really join the Char Legions. And when they do so, they tend to do it based on something they've done that was their victory, that gave them the right to leave. And so you have several that call themselves Blade because they stabbed something, or several who call themselves Fist because of some other action. And when you find two warbands that both call themselves the Fist Warband, there tends to be a friendly rivalry. This doesn't force either of them to change their name, but it gives the Char a sense of who's better than the other, and it can cause some pretty bloody arguments, and then sometimes it can be just for fun. It depends on how the warbands respect each other. And within the warband, a Char whose last name is Blade might be Blade Storm, and his first name is Veros. And so you have a very different name from someone in the other warband whose name might be Blade Steel. So they can tell each other apart just fine, and they know which one they're talking about regardless.
Is there any reason given to the amount of self-will given to the Elder Dragon's minions? That is, the destroyers in Guild Wars 1, except the Great Destroyer, are mindless. But Glint and seemingly a few others clearly are not. Why is this?
Some of the minions or the servants of the Great Dragons are called champions, and they are specifically imbued by the dragon to lead the rest. In Or, you have the mindless undead who are washing up on the beach, and then you have Tekpotl, who is the Great Dragon in the demo that we're doing here. And he has a lot more self-will, and he can kind of control these others for Zaitan. And the dragons pick the ones who are the best recipients of their will. It's sort of like they just grab the strongest, the most powerful, the most capable, and that one becomes a conduit through which leads the ones who are more mindless. So you see things like Glint and you see things like Tekpotl that have a lot more self-will because they need to, because they lead these troops into battle.
How do the Blood, Iron, and Ash Imperiators decide on issues that affect the Char as a whole, rather than the primarily one legion?
Each Imperator speaks only for their legion and only for their land. So in Guild Wars 2, we are in the Iron Legion's domain, which is led by Smoter the Unflinching. The other legions have troops there at his command or at his request, and they turn to him as the leader of the Char for that area because it is the Iron Legion's land. If an Iron Legion warband went to the Blood Legion's homeland, which is outside of the area, that Imperator would be in charge. And if Smoter makes a peace treaty with the humans, technically the Blood and the Ash are not restrained by that in their home territories, but while a Blood Legion warband is in the Iron territory, they are constrained because they're in his lands. And until such time as there is a Kanur who unifies the legions and can speak for them all, it's about the best the Char can do.
Do all races go to the Underworld when they die, or is that just for worshippers of the Six?
There's a mystic connection between the Mists and the Underworld. All races go to the Mists when they die. And we see in the PvP areas that the Mists hold memories of ancient battles and times before this. The Underworld is connected through that, so any race that dies could go to the Underworld, but the ones who are sentenced there by the will of a deity.
So onto Sylvari lore. What inspires the names you give to your Sylvari characters?
When a Sylvari wakes up, they have an idea of what they call themselves. We see this in Catty Ern's story in my blog last Friday. The Sylvari ask him, "What is your name?" And he thinks about it for a moment and goes, Catiurn. And they aren't sure where those names come from. They believe that perhaps the pale tree puts them into the dream, but it's equally possible that for themselves, each Sylvari settles upon a name before they're awakened.
What controls the Sylvari birth rate? Does the pale tree do this consciously? What are the factors? What factors inform her doing so?
There's a lot of questions about will the pale tree just create so many Sylvari it will overwhelm the world. The pale tree is not capable. She's not that prolific in creating Sylvari. Over the 25 years, there were long periods. The firstborn were born, and then you had several years, and then the next set were born, and then you had several years in the next set. And they grew slightly bigger each time. And we use this as a conceit, saying all player characters are born at the beginning of the game, and the tutorial is their dream, and then they are awakened. But we don't want to give the impression that millions upon millions of Sylvari are just flooding into the world. I mean, it's the pale tree is choosing how large her children will be, and even in that, she still has to propagate and give birth to them. She can't just decide to have 10 more today. They have to grow, and they have to be ready. If you let a Sylvari out of his pod and awaken when he's not ready, he's just not going to be able to deal with the world. He's going to be malformed or not intelligent, and that's not something she's willing to do to her children.
Okay. Sorry, I've never seen this name on paper before. Catiurn's? Catiurn. Catiurn.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Catiurn's story is very striking. It's drastic for him to go from second-guessing the tablet to taking part in the Nightmare Court's terrorism. What happened to him between his conversation with the Pale Tree and Cave and his joining the Nightmare Court?
The story segments in the blog that cover Catiurn and his birth to his joining the Nightmare Court, or really creating the Nightmare Court, take place over several years. They aren't all at once immediately. He just goes from a good guy to a bad guy. He experiences life, and he doesn't understand that the Pale Tree wants the Sylvari to live a certain way, that there's a difference between good and evil. He has a very childlike mind in that he wants something, why can't he have it? He's been killing Crate. What's the difference in killing children who are Crate? And the Pale Tree tries to help educate him, and he's just not willing to leave this concept that he has, that I should have what I want to have. Why am I doing anything else? By the time he talks to the Pale Tree and she gives him the best answers she can, he's already angry. What Kaith says to him, she says because she's trying to just tell him the truth. She's not trying to be mean. It comes off very meanly. It was not a good thing to say, and Kaith didn't have the social capacity to understand how he might take it. But he was already halfway there. He wouldn't have been asking the tree those questions in the first place. He was already getting ready to leave and coming to the Pale Tree to pick a fight and demand that she see things his way. So by the time he goes, the declination has happened, and he's already begun thinking thoughts about the Nightmare Court and creating a group of Sylvari who don't follow the tenets of the tree and don't listen to the good side of the dream and try to reinforce the negative parts of the dream.
And on to engineer lore. While the engineer profession originates amongst the Char, how do engineers fit into the cultures of other races?
Engineering as a profession is fairly new, even in Guild Wars 2 lore. The Char have been doing things which could be called engineering for some time. They've been building things. The Iron Legion has their siege weapons. But they trade this knowledge in a very limited fashion. And it's only after Smoder has really started allowing other races into the city. The Asura have come and built an Asura gate. The Sylvari have started to explore. He's starting to make a peace treaty with Queen Jenna of the humans. That technology has started getting out. And the same thing for the Asura and their magic. Their technology is starting getting out as they've become a little more reliant on the other races and less independent. And that gets into the culture, and the other races are very curious. I mean, if you have a bridge you have to raise by pulling a chain, and you have a bridge you have to raise by just cranking a handle, and it's much quicker, you want the easier technology. You want what's faster. So a lot of them have grabbed onto it and begun experimenting with it. We see some in Divinity's Reach in various things like the one-man band, which was made by a human, but a lot of the technology in creating it was probably Char in its original creation that the humans have taken over the course of the last 5 or 10 years and begun to utilize in their own way.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ree, for your time, and high five.